Welcome to The True Guy, Globe Brief Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for updates. On a day like no other, something extraordinary happened in Jerusalem, a city where history and faith are woven into every stone, and where the air itself seems to hum with ancient stories. The city, usually alive with the sounds of footsteps, prayers, and daily life, suddenly fell into an uncanny silence. The ancient city, a place of stone and story, suddenly fell quiet. Streets that had witnessed centuries of conflict and celebration were now empty, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Then, breaking the silence, a sound began to rise, not the wail of sirens or the bustle of markets, but the deep, resonant peal of bells. Church bells from the Christian quarter rang out, their solemn tones echoing over the city, weaving through narrow alleys and across rooftops, reaching every corner of Jerusalem. This wasn't for a holiday, a festival, or the arrival of a dignitary. There were no parades, no banners, no crowds gathered in celebration. Instead, the city was mourning one of its own, a man most had never heard of, but whose absence was suddenly felt by all. The tribute crossed every line, breaking through the usual divisions of this sacred place. In a city often defined by its differences, something remarkable was happening. People from every faith, every background, paused together. The bells rang for a caregiver, a nurse, someone whose daily acts of kindness had quietly touched countless lives. He was a gentle soul from far away, a man named Elmer, who had come to Jerusalem not for glory, but to help and to heal. Elmer's story is a reminder of the power we all have to connect, to heal, and to love, even in the most divided and troubled places. His compassion bridged gaps that politics and history could not. The news of his passing spread quietly, not through bold headlines or breaking news, but in soft whispers, in conversations over coffee, and in the gentle sharing of sorrow. From the Western Wall to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, from synagogues to churches, people asked the same questions. Who was this man? Why did the bells toll for him? What had he done to unite a city so often divided? Shopkeepers lowered their shutters in respect, pausing their daily routines to honor a man they may never have met, but whose spirit had touched their city. People who had argued for generations, who had lived side by side yet worlds apart, now shared a common quiet grief. For a moment, old wounds seemed to fade. It was a moment of unity so profound, so unexpected, it felt almost miraculous, a rare pause in the city's long, complicated story. Sometimes it takes an ordinary person living an extraordinary life of service to remind us of our shared humanity and the simple acts that bind us together. Let's uncover the story of the man who made Jerusalem's bells ring, and discover how one life can echo through an entire city. His name was Elmer de la Cruz. You probably haven't seen his face on magazine covers or heard his name in the headlines, but sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes are the ones who quietly walk among us, unnoticed by the world at large. He wasn't a diplomat or a religious leader, just a nurse from the Philippines. He didn't wear a cape or command a crowd. Instead, he wore scrubs and a gentle smile, blending into the background of a bustling hospital where every day brought new challenges and new lives to touch. His face wasn't on the news, but his impact was written on the hearts of hundreds. Patients remembered his kindness long after their wounds had healed. Families spoke his name with gratitude, recalling the comfort he brought in their darkest hours. He was one of millions of overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, who leave home to care for the world. Every year, thousands of Filipinos say goodbye to their families, crossing oceans in search of work, driven by hope and a sense of duty. Elmer's story is their story. It's the story of sacrifice, resilience, and quiet heroism. It's about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, not for recognition, but out of love and responsibility. He worked at a busy Jerusalem hospital where patients from every faith and background came together. In this city, ancient and modern, sacred and scarred, the hospital was a rare place where differences faded and humanity took center stage. In this intense environment, Elmer was a force of calm. When tempers flared or fear took hold, he was the steady hand, the reassuring voice, the gentle presence that made people feel safe. He moved through chaos with quiet grace, his smile a beacon of hope. Even on the longest nights when exhaustion weighed heavy, he found ways to lift the spirits of those around him. He was more than a nurse, he was a steady presence in a world of uncertainty. For patients far from home, he was a reminder that kindness knows no borders. Jerusalem is a city of breathtaking beauty and heartbreaking tension, where invisible walls separate communities. The city's history is written in its stones, but its future is shaped by the people who live and work there every day. Elmer, with his gentle spirit, walked through these walls as if they weren't there. He crossed boundaries not with words but with actions, small gestures that built bridges where others saw barriers. He saw not labels, but people. To him, every patient was a story, every colleague a fellow traveler on the journey of life. He didn't see a Jewish patient or a Muslim doctor, he saw someone who needed care. He treated everyone with the same compassion, the same respect, no matter their background or beliefs. In his eyes, everyone was worthy of kindness and respect. He believed that dignity was a right, not a privilege, and he offered it freely to all. This simple philosophy worked quiet magic within the hospital. It softened hardened hearts, eased tensions, and reminded everyone that healing is about more than medicine. He wasn't trying to change the world. He didn't seek applause or awards. He simply did his job, day after day, with humility and grace. He was just making his small corner of it better. Through small acts of kindness, a gentle word, a helping hand, a listening ear, he made a difference that rippled far beyond the hospital walls. Sometimes, that's all it takes. And sometimes, that's enough. In a world hungry for heroes, Elmer de la Cruz reminds us that greatness is often found in the quietest acts of love. Elmer's journey began far from Jerusalem, in a place where the air was thick with the scent of rice fields and the sound of roosters crowing at dawn. Life in his small town in Pangasinan, Philippines, moved at a gentle pace, shaped by tradition and the warmth of close-knit families. He grew up surrounded by people who looked out for one another, where neighbors were like extended family and every celebration was shared by the whole community. Elmer learned early that true wealth was measured not in money, but in the strength of your relationships and the kindness you showed to others. Kindness was the currency of his childhood, exchanged in small gestures, a shared meal, a helping hand, a smile to brighten someone's day. From a young age, Elmer dreamed of becoming a nurse. It wasn't the promise of a high salary that drew him in, but the hope of easing pain and bringing comfort to those in need. He saw nursing as a calling, a way to give back to the world that had given him so much. He put himself through nursing school, often studying late into the night by the dim light of a single bulb. Every exam he passed, every challenge he overcame, was fueled by a promise he made to his family, to build them a better life, to lift them out of hardship. Like many Filipinos, Elmer looked abroad for opportunity, knowing that working overseas could open doors that were closed at home. The decision weighed heavily on him, but hope for a brighter future kept him moving forward. Leaving home was the hardest decision he ever made. The night before his departure, his family gathered for a simple meal, laughter mingling with tears as they tried to make the most of their last moments together. His mother quietly packed his suitcase, slipping in a handwritten note. She hugged him tightly and whispered, "Be a light to others, wherever you go." Her words lingered in his heart, a gentle reminder of home. Arriving in Jerusalem was a whirlwind of new experiences, a city alive with history but also filled with unfamiliar sights, sounds, and flavors. The language was foreign, the food strange, and the atmosphere often tense, making every day a test of courage and adaptability. He missed his family deeply, especially during quiet nights in his small apartment. But whenever he felt lonely, he remembered his promise and the love that waited for him back home. Each morning he put on his scrubs and walked into the hospital, determined to be a light for others, just as his mother had asked. The hospital became his new community, and his patients, his extended family. His mother's words became his guiding principle, a quiet strength that helped him face each new challenge with compassion and resilience. In a foreign land, he chose kindness as his compass, offering comfort to those in pain and hope to those who felt alone. Every small act of care was a tribute to his roots and the values he carried from home, and that made all the difference, not just for his patients but for Elmer himself, as he discovered that even far from home, kindness could light the way. Elmer's life in Jerusalem was one of quiet sacrifice. He worked double shifts, sending nearly every shekel home for his family's needs. He missed family celebrations, experiencing them only through video calls. The burden of being a provider, yet a stranger, weighed heavily. The work was demanding, physically and emotionally. He comforted the sick, celebrated recoveries, and held hands in final moments. He learned words in Hebrew and Arabic to greet patients, brought flowers to brighten rooms, and remembered small details about colleagues. These tiny acts were seeds of connection. In the hospital's fertile ground they grew into something beautiful. Elmer rarely spoke of his own struggles. He simply kept giving, quietly, every day. One sweltering summer evening, a power failure plunged the hospital into darkness. Chaos erupted, monitors fell silent, fear filled the air. In that moment, Elmer became the calm in the storm. His steady voice cut through the panic. "We have our hands and our hearts, let's get to work." Flashlight in hand, he moved from room to room, checking on the most critical patients. He organized staff, created a human chain for supplies, and comforted the frightened. He held the hand of an elderly man, hummed a lullaby, reassured a young mother. In the darkness, his humanity shone brighter than any light. When power returned, the hospital had changed. Staff and patients saw Elmer as their anchor. That night, he did more than his job. He united a fractured community. He became their guardian angel. His courage and compassion left a mark no one would forget. Sometimes true leadership is simply showing up with love, and that's what Elmer did. After the blackout, Elmer became the hospital's unofficial heart. Doctors sought his advice, nurses looked up to him, and his kindness became legendary. He started a good news board, shifting focus from stress to hope. He cooked dishes from different cultures, bridging gaps with food and friendship. He honored every faith, listening, comforting, and respecting all. Rabbis, imams, and priests came to know the gentle Filipino nurse who treated everyone with dignity. Elmer showed that empathy is a universal language. The hospital became a true community with Elmer at its center. He was the light his mother asked him to be, and he made everyone around him better. The news came suddenly. Elmer had passed away in his sleep, only 45. The hospital was stunned. Grief swept through every corridor. Nurses wept, doctors stood in silence, patients mourned their angel. The good news board filled with notes of love and remembrance. The sorrow spread beyond the hospital. Messages poured in from across Jerusalem. An elderly rabbi called, a Muslim family sent flowers. Elmer's kindness had created a vast unseen network of love. Community leaders asked, how can we honor him? He never sought recognition, but in his passing, the city rose to acknowledge his greatness. The quiet hero was finally seen. And Jerusalem's heart broke together. The memorial service was unlike anything Jerusalem had seen. People of every faith and background filled the hospital auditorium. The chief of surgery spoke through tears, recalling Elmer's lessons in healing. A former patient, an Arab-Israeli grandmother, remembered his comforting lullaby. Elmer's closest friend, a Filipina nurse, shared his sacrifices and dreams. Then, Filipino nurses sang Sa Ugoy ang Duyan, a lullaby from home. The rabbi hummed along, the Muslim grandmother swayed, the priest bowed in prayer. For a moment, there were no divisions, only shared humanity. It was a chorus of angels, a final farewell to a man who united them all. Elmer's greatest miracle was this unity. His legacy was love. Elmer's body returned to the Philippines, but his spirit remained in Jerusalem. The hospital created the Elmer de la Cruz Award for Compassionate Care. His good news board became a permanent fixture. His story is told to every new employee, not just as a lesson in nursing but in humanity. In Pangasinan, his sacrifices built homes and futures for his family. Elmer's story inspires local youth and reflects the experience of millions of overseas Filipino workers. They are the world's quiet heroes, building bridges with kindness and resilience. Let us remember Elmer and honor all those whose names we may never know. In their everyday acts of care, we find our greatest hope and strength. Their stories deserve to be told.